One second you're in a Porsche going 160 miles an hour. Then...
Calling all units, 675 Main. Backup needed.
These are the untold stories of football players. And by the time Zlatan turned 19, he was already one of Sweden's most wanted. Let me explain. Growing up, Zlatan just didn't even know any better. His mom was incarcerated, and dad was an alcoholic who could barely afford food. So Zlatan grew up starving and desperate for money, acceptance, and making a way out. And he made himself a promise that if he ever saw that light at the end of the tunnel, he'd never let off the gas. But that promise led to the wildest night of his life. Once Zlatan became a teenager, he was on a mission to accomplish 2 goals: becoming a pro football player and...
When you come from my neighborhood, the first thing you wanted was to have a cool car.
But playing in youth football clubs and struggling to make a name just wasn't getting the job done. He needed money. So in public, he started working at his local dock. But behind the scenes, he was living a double life. And just so he could eat, he started committing crimes, stealing bikes and shoplifting. But once he got his first taste of cash and the adrenaline that came with it, it became an addiction. So his football career began diminishing as his love for the game slipped. But his life of crime, it helped him survive long enough to accomplish one of his goals.
So I bought a Porsche Turbo with my last money.
But right when he bought that, it became his biggest mistake.
Was driving around. I was driving fast because I like the adrenaline. Then suddenly police was chasing me. So I ask you now, do you think I stopped or not? I didn't. I drove until I found that tunnel underneath the highway, and I was waiting there, and they kept going.
Zlatan's heart was beating out of his chest, because somehow he got away. But that night when he laid in bed, his entire life flashed before his eyes. And Zlatan was scared, because that feeling of adrenaline was something he could never let go. So right then and there, he told himself to instead channel that killer instinct on the field, chase his other goals, and become one of football's most lethal strikers. And now when you see Zlatan dominating, just know that one night, that one decision created a legend. If only my boy Lukaku learned his lesson before it was too late. Cause back in 2017, he was setting records on and off the field. But deep down, Lukaku had a secret. Even though he was playing in Everton, his heart just wasn't on the field. All Lukaku could think about was how his playing days in Everton reached its peak. And also, a text from his boy. So Lukaku thought long and hard, and he realized it was time for change. So on July 1st, Lukaku gambled with his career, demanded a transfer, and planned a vacation. Cause what better place to think things through and let off some steam than the #1 party state in America? So Lukaku packed his bags, hopped on a flight, and fled the country. Lukaku and his boy Pogba pulled up in Beverly Hills, rented a mansion you only see in movies, and anxiously waited on Lukaku's transfer. Until... it was official. Lukaku and Pogba were teammates. And we all know these guys, man. They weren't just about to call it a night. They had to celebrate. So right then and there, things got lit. Yeah, things really got that crazy. And well, the neighbors could have handled the music, but when they looked up and saw a dirt bike soaring through the air, that was the final straw. They called the cops over and over and over until the 6th time, and that's when they pulled up. Now, if you know anything about LA police, it's that when shit gets wild, they got a zero tolerance policy. So right when they came through, Lukaku was arrested. But our boy's lucky, man, because his millions of dollars didn't just buy him a mansion, it bought him lawyers. So all it cost Lukaku was a fine. But what Sergio Ramos did almost cost him his life. See, Ramos has always been a wild boy. And growing up in Sevilla, Ramos wanted to risk it all for the thrill. But his parents were concerned that one day they'd hear of a devastating accident. So they forced Ramos' older brother to step in and convince him to try out football, putting him in a youth club. But to Ramos, playing a sport like this, it was just never enough. He was thriving, and yet he just felt like this sport lacked the danger he fiended for. So even though his parents and the club forbid him from biking, he chose to live reckless and do it secretly. It became an addiction, because whenever he gripped them handlebars, he felt invincible until one mistake made him pay the ultimate price.
Yo tenía prácticamente prohibido montarme en las motos ya desde el club y bueno, pues una desgracia, un accidente que tuve con mi cuñado Carlos y en el Sevilla pues tuvimos que contar la verdad obviamente porque era inevitable.
Fue prácticamente un año y un poco más donde lo pasó mal porque él no podía prácticamente ni andar.
Estuve a punto de quedarme cojo y estuve un año prácticamente, hice pues una recuperación pasando un dolor.
Pensábamos que no se iba a recuperar.
Alguna vez sí que pensé, pues, la he jodido, ¿no?
Against all odds, Ramos not only went on to recover, he became a greater football player than he ever imagined. And you'd think coming face to face with death, he would have given up his biking dreams. But here we are in 2021, and Ramos just couldn't help himself. So let's just hope he doesn't end up in the ER again. Like the time a football player was one day healthy, the next day dying, and doctors had no explanation. Because in 2010, Virgil van Dijk wasn't yet the football player he wanted to be. But the problem was, his time was running out. Low-key, Van Dijk's family was struggling, so he worked as a part-time dishwasher to help put food on the table. And that's when he was forced to make his life's toughest decision, because things at the restaurant were getting hectic. And Van Dijk's manager faced him with an ultimatum. It was either his job or his dreams. But Van Dijk knew that he'd never be able to live with himself if he didn't try, so it was a no-brainer. He hung up his apron and risked it all. And luckily he did, because that year, he switched positions and started dominating football. And eventually, he was offered the deal of a lifetime, being transferred to a Dutch pro club and invited to play for the Netherlands national team. So the future was looking bright. But one day out of nowhere, his teammates noticed he was acting weird. Out there on the pitch, Van Dijk was tired and looked kinda sick. So he probably just caught a cold, right? Well, he let everyone know that it was probably best for him to just head home to rest and recover.
Back to Hot 97, speaking of fire, you subscribe to that channel, Kick Flicks?
Van Dijk started to feel so nauseous, he took a detour and pulled up to a hospital. But when the doctors took a look, everything seemed normal. So they told Van Dijk to head home and just sleep it off. Big mistake. Because while he was laying down, Van Dijk felt like he got stabbed in the chest and could barely stand up. So now, he was scared for his life. But luckily, that's right when Mama Van Dijk pulled up to check on him. And right when she walked in, he was battling just to survive. So she had no choice. Right when the doctors saw Van Dijk's condition, they immediately rushed him to the ER, because he was fading away. He was dazed, confused, and while he could barely see or even speak, the doctors had him sign a will, and they told Mom, hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst, cause it was time to put him out of his misery. When they opened him up, it turned out Van Dijk's appendix burst. His stomach was inflamed, and his kidneys were infected. He was literally dying. And if this was anybody else, their story would have ended right there. But Van Dijk, he's built different. A few hours later, Van Dijk woke up and everything felt like a dream. But the doctors came in and let him know he was seconds away from death, and they saved his life. So Van Dijk made a promise that he wasn't gonna take his blessing for granted, because anything can happen at any moment. Like the player who got kidnapped in the middle of a football game. Yeah, that really happened. Back in 2019, we were in Sicily, home of the mafia, and a group of ski-mask maniacs were looking to make history. Because they knew not just any football game was taking place, it was a championship, and all the spotlight was gonna be on This guy? Yeah, it was the final match of his career. And when the criminal organization heard about an opportunity to go viral, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to add up that this game was about to get crazy. And well, the crowd was hyped, because this hometown team was about to be crowned champion. But nobody wanted more than Ignacio Barbagallo, because he was looking to get one final win before saying goodbye to the game. But little did he know, he should have said goodbye to everyone and everything. Ignacio wanted to go out with a bang, but I don't think this is what he meant. Things went from football to GTA real quick, so the kidnapping turned into an all-out investigation, where the entire city's police departments were on the hunt. And until they found out the truth, for 3 months, all the city's football competitions were banned, because this was Italian football's craziest controversy. But it turned out, Ignacio planned the whole thing? Yeah, just because he wanted to make the news. Kinda reminds me of the girl who's been secretly ruining Ronaldo's life. It's 2017. Ronaldo just cashed a check for $3 million, and his phone's ringing non-stop.
Ronaldo, hear me out. The new Bitcoin, NFT.
So right then and there, Ronaldo jumped on his jet. But this is where the problem started. See, Ronaldo was flying in and out of Madrid so damn much, if he had to book one more flight, he was gonna get an in-real-life red card. You really think he's trying to book his own flights? What is he, a normal person? Nah, he needed to put his trust in a travel agency, who could easily book his flights on schedule. So a company connected him with one of their top representatives, a 53-year-old woman, Maria Silva.
Hey Ronaldo, it's Maria. I heard your schedule was getting pretty messy, so let's work.
And after their discussion, these two built a strong bond. So Ronaldo felt at ease handing over his banking information. But the woman he was dealing with wasn't who he or the travel agency thought she was. For years, Ronaldo's traveled with no problems from country to country. He's taken some vacations and life was good. But one day, he got a call from his accountant that made his heart skip a beat. The accountant noticed something suspicious about Ronaldo's bank statements. Like, he knew Ronaldo's schedule and where he'd be every day, but somehow the statements told a different story. There were flights to Russia, Angola, the United States, when Ronaldo was nowhere near there. So they had to get to the bottom of this before it was too late. The two met up, they talked, and Ronaldo agreed to meet with his lawyer. Because there wasn't just a crime taking place. Someone literally stole his identity. So Ronaldo contacted law enforcement, and they set up an investigation before Ronaldo's millions of dollars in savings were torched. So these detectives made Ronaldo a promise that they weren't gonna sleep till they found the perpetrator. The detectives dug deep, connected the dots, and narrowed down the suspects, until all things pointed in the same direction: the travel agent. For years, Maria was dealing with a long list of VIP clients and their million-dollar bank accounts. Meanwhile, she was struggling to even stack a couple thousand. So when the opportunity came to work with a billionaire, she couldn't see past Ronaldo pulling up in Bugattis, flexing diamond watches, and racking in millions every month. So Maria not only wanted that lifestyle, she needed it, and Ronaldo was the perfect victim. So once these two connected, it was just a matter of time before she abused her power and committed fraud. Maria thought she was slick, because when booking her clients' flights, instead of sending the cash to her company account, she sent the money to herself, pocketing the fees. And guess what? She used Ronaldo's bankroll to pay for all the flight costs. And obviously when you look at it, it wasn't as smooth as she thought, because the whole time, Maria was leaving a paper trail, but she never thought Ronaldo would notice thousands missing. So at first, he unknowingly paid for over 200 flights. But after racking up over $300,000 in plane tickets, Ronaldo's accountant finally caught on and alerted law enforcement. So once the detectives cracked the case, Maria was arrested and sentenced to 4 years in prison. But if that wasn't bad enough, once she's released, she'll even be forced to pay the $300,000 back. So I don't know what's the bigger punishment, a fine like that, or spending 4 whole years not being able to click this video right here.